Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
I can hear you, Aaron.
I think Yvette can't hear us.
This is Larry Schooler. We can hear you on the public hotline.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the City of Gainesville's first virtual City Plan Board meeting. It is 6:31 p.m. on Thursday, May 28th, 2020, and we have a few items on the agenda tonight. If staff could first please call the roll.
All righty. Aaron Condon.
Here.
Stephanie Sutton.
Here.
Bob Ackerman. Bob Ackerman.
Here.
Megan Walker-Radke. Here. Christian Newman.
Here.
Thomas Hawkins.
Here.
James Blythe.
Here.
All right, so we have a quorum.
Thank you. And next on our agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. And remember, if you're going to make a motion or a second, if you could raise your hand so we know who's doing what on our little side panel. So if I could have a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Ackerman, I think you need to unmute yourself.
I move that we amend that we accept the agenda as proposed.
Okay, and Mr. Newman?
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'll go through a roll call. All in favor, Stephanie Sutton?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Bob Ackerman?
Yes.
Megan Walker-Radke?
Yes.
Christian Newman?
Yes.
Thomas Hawkins?
Yes.
James Blythe?
Yes.
And I am also an aye, so motion passes unanimously. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting? Mr. Ackerman?
I move we approve the motion. I'm sorry. I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting, which has been quite a long time ago.
Okay, we have a motion for Mr. Ackerman. Is that a second for Mr. Newman?
Yes, it is a second for me.
Okay, and I'm going to go through the roll call again. All those in favor, please say aye. Stephanie Sutton?
Aye.
Bob Ackerman?
Aye.
Megan Walker-Radke?
Aye.
Christian Newman?
Aye.
Thomas Hawkins?
Aye.
James Blythe?
Aye.
And I also say aye. So motion passes unanimously. Staff, could you please read the announcement into the record?
Section 30-3.3 of the Land Development Code establishes the Plan Board, including its membership, rules of procedure and functions, powers, and duties. The Plan Board is advisory to the City Commission on most planning petitions. Appeals of Plan Board decisions concerning special use permits are to a hearing officer within 30 calendar days of the decision. See Section 30-3-5.8 of the Land Development Code. The procedure for an appeal is set forth in Section 30-3.5.
Thank you, Yvette. Is there any old business? Seeing none, let's move on to new business. Staff, could you please read the item into the record?
City of Gainesville, text amendment to the Land Development Code to add single room occupancy residence as a non-residential use in Article 4, along with applicable use standards added to Article 5 and definition added to Article 2. This is petition 19-132 TCH text change.
Thank you. I believe staff has a presentation on tonight's item.
Yes, let me share my screen. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. This is a proposed text change to add single room occupancy residences. This request came in summer of 2019. There was a joint meeting between, is it still not? Sorry about that. I'm trying to fix the screen. Okay, now can you see it correctly?
Yes, that looks better.
Again, this is a proposed text change to the land development code. The city commission, along with city plan board, held a joint meeting to discuss different potential code amendments back in 2019. And SROs were on that list and seen as a way to possibly address affordable housing issues. We've also included just a definition of single room occupancy, a general definition. It's considered a form of housing to provide low income persons or two-person households with housing that's typically furnished and provides some sort of on-site laundry, bathrooms, shared kitchens, shower facilities. It's very much so similar to hotels and dormitories in that they're small units which are typically furnished. When we looked at other cities, we had a hard time. There aren't a lot of cities that have a lot of information on single room occupancy. It's more of a traditional use that's kind of gone away. We did look to, I think there was some information that Houston had, Charlotte, Chicago had a little bit of information. We just included a couple of photos from a project called New Hope Housing in Houston. And this is the proposed definition that we have. It's a multifamily use consisting of living units intended for occupancy of no more than one person. The site should be composed of efficiency or one bedroom units within unit, kitchen, and bathroom options or shared kitchen and bathroom available on site. We're proposing that they are allowed in U7 through DT zoning districts, which is the same as hotels. Mixed use, non-residential, business transportation, business industrial, and some of the special districts, and then require a special use permit for MU1 and MU2 corporate and warehousing. And it would not be permitted in any of the residential districts. These are some of the standards that we're proposing. What we found when, again, researching other communities that have done this, it was important to include specific standards in order to avoid any kind of unintended consequences or outcomes. The use standards that we were proposing are similar to those that we found in some of the communities that we did look at. We're limiting the unit size to 80 square feet with a maximum of 100 square feet. We do have some provisions to require that they are affordable to low-income persons. We're asking that they be located within a quarter mile of RTS routes, shared kitchen facilities or individual kitchenettes, the same with bathroom facilities, and that there needs to be a management person present 24 hours a day. So with that said, staff recommends approval. And we're here for any, if you have any questions or comments.
And, this is Andrew. I just want to jump in before we start discussions. I think with the SROs, the way that staff sort of approach this is we have, I think as Yvette indicated, we have a couple of different similar type of uses. We have dormitories, large and small in the code. We have hotels and motels, obviously. I'd encourage the board to think about this as a starting point. You know, we sort of went around and around and talked about, you know, different options for how to look at these. And I think where we landed, and it's certainly not the only way that we could approach this. And I think we're open and interested in hearing board comment as approaching them similar to hotels. I think there are some of the questions that I think we had discussed internally was about, you know, is this a residential use or a commercial use? Meaning, is this something that functions more similarly to like a hotel, or is it more like a multifamily type of development that would be subject to density and to potentially different parts of the building code? So those are some of the things that we discussed, and you know, I think we're not necessarily expecting the board to, the plan board to, you know, land on a recommendation or final language tonight. Only this is an opportunity to start the discussion.
All right, thank you, Andrew. I already see I have one question from the board, Mr. Ackerman.
Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes, we can.
It appears that the summary you just did of the proposed amendment to Article 4 does not track with the page 10 that is in the handout. Specifically, you're limiting it to 100 square feet. This seems to increase it to 300 square feet. The amendment shows that we're requiring parking. It doesn't seem to be the same thing.
Yeah, there is.
I'm looking on page 10 of the handout, which is entitled Proposed Amendment to Article 5, Use Standards.
Yeah, I see that under B, unit size.
I think the 300 is the correct. I think that's a typo.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the 300 is correct?
Correct.
Okay, I guess my question then is, why do we have a maximum at all? I'm reluctant to add a whole bunch of regulations to this because I understand some of the concern, which I'm not sure is valid, but it seems like we need to make this as attractive as we can. And for me, that means you give them I agree with a minimum size, but I don't agree with a maximum size. Not that I think you're going to end up with 600 square foot SROs, but anyway, I don't understand why we would do that. I also don't understand why we're requiring off-street parking when in more than a few districts, we don't require any parking at all. And we're simultaneously requiring that it be within a quarter mile of a transportation, buses or RTS or something like that. So again, what I'm trying to say is I want to, keeping in mind, and I you know, disclosure, I'm on the board of Grace Marketplace. SROs are considered to be an important part of solving the affordable housing problem. It's not going to solve all of it, but it obviously addresses one feature of it. And so I hate to encrust it with a lot of expenses that are unnecessary. And my one other one is I don't have any problem. When I went to college, I lived in a frat house. We had, you know, gang showers. We had, you know, basically a washroom and bathroom down the hall, and people could use that. I don't object to putting sinks in the rooms, but it strikes me that as soon as you require a toilet, you're basically requiring a whole bathroom. those are just my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Next, we have Mr. Newman, or I guess does staff want to address any of Mr. Ackerman's points?
No, I mean, I would just say that, I'm not, I guess I don't disagree with Mr. Ackerman's points. I think with the parking, I mean, one option would be the language could be amended just to track with the underlying zoning. So obviously, like most of the higher level transect zones don't require minimum parking. Some of the other zoning districts where some of the mixed-use zoning districts or more Euclidean zoning districts do require parking. So that they could just be based on the parking or the underlying zoning if that's the board's desire. Or if you think that there's would be better to have an alternative parking standard, that could be something that we could bring back to you as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Newman?
Yeah, I had some similar questions around the 100 square footage, but that's been answered. I guess my other sort of question is there some anticipation that essentially more of these units are going to be sort of built, or is it that hotels, motels will be converted to this? That they will. Yeah. So what is it that we're just that this somehow sort of allows the market to, or those existing places that might sort of fit this criteria to transition to this, or is it that we're looking to create an opportunity that this could be built?
So I guess I can share. In the 8 years that I've been with the city, I've had one SRO or potential SRO that's come in and talked to the city about being established. In that instance, it was an older motel that was being purchased by one of the two housing authorities. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, and converted to an SRO. So I think my assumption would be that we do have some older motels and hotels in town, and I would assume that would be probably the first instance where somebody may be doing that. I think it would probably be a housing authority, or as Mr. Ackerman indicated, another nonprofit or semi-nonprofit housing provider who would be taking this on. But our door is not necessarily being knocked down for people who are clamoring to build SROs.
Thank you, Mr. Persons. Mr. Blythe.
Thank you. I had a similar question about the square footage that was answered. I was worried that 100 square foot maximum would be really tight, to have some of those pieces put in. The one piece of this that could make affordable would be if we did require, if this was new construction, that bump up the cost relatively significant to the size of the units. So as long as it's still allowed for them to have shared facilities and not forced, I think that would be, my only just note for it.
Thank you, Mr. Blythe. Mr. Hawkins?
Thanks, Aaron. Am I still muted? Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Thanks. And I should say Chair Condon. My apologies. I had a question for Mr. Persons. I'm looking at the definition of dormitory and comparing it to the definition of an SRO. And I can't really tell the difference. And so I kind of think about it from this perspective.
Right.
If an applicant wants to build a use like this, they've got, maybe it's a hotel they're going to convert, or maybe they're going to build some new construction. they were looking at the code and trying to figure out, what they're going to call it on their application to get staff approval. And we've got this page of rules on page 10 that we're applying to a project that we call SRO, but that we would not apply to a project that was called a dormitory. But when you look at the definition, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between the two. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're essentially allowing the applicant to elect either the dormitory or the SRO option, depending on whether they want to subject themselves to all these rules or not. With the exception of the few zoning districts, I mean, are there zoning districts where an SRO is allowed and a dormitory is not? Maybe in those those ones where it's allowed by special use permit because they're not typical residential?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't everybody just say, this is not SRO, this is a dormitory, I'm going to build it and I'm not subject to any of the rules that we have listed on page 10?
Well,
and if we want to really allow this use, maybe that's how we want to handle this. Maybe we just want to say, tweak the definition of dormitories to say these are also SROs and be done with it.
And that was honestly, that was one of our initial kind of takes. We're like, well, how is this different from a dormitory? I guess the one difference would be, at least in terms of which zoning it's allowed in. And this is, again, like something that we sort of went back and forth on staff about, is like, are SROs okay in residential districts versus, I think as the staff proposal that we're talking about, where it's strictly the commercial or mixed use zoning districts. So if we did, like, let's say we amended the dormitory definition just to include SROs as a use, and potentially maybe added some standards, some additional standards for dormitories in general. That's another sort of path that we can take. There may be, we may get pushback for allowing these in residential areas, but that's nothing that's necessarily unusual, I guess. But that again, like, this is something that it does fall, like we kind of talked about, like sort of close to a hotel and close to a dormitory. So and this is a starting point. So if the board would like us to explore that option, we can bring that back as well.
So I'm comparing where dormitories are allowed compared to what you have. Compared to what you have there. And so in MU1, we allow dormitories, small dormitories by right, or single room occupancy by special use permit. So, I mean, if I were an applicant, I would just call it dormitory, and it's allowed. I guess they're both require a special use permit in MU1.
Yeah, and small dormitories are limited. There are, I think, some standards in Article 5 about dormitories as well.
Okay. All right. I'm not necessarily sure I understand why we ended up with the approach that we did. But maybe we just want to have two options. Maybe the best outcome here is that an applicant can elect which one they want and sort of pick which rule option works better for them. On page 10, I had a couple of questions. Starting with D, transportation. What is the purpose of requiring an SRO to be within 1/4 mile of a bus line?
I guess to encourage placement of them where residents may be less able or don't have a personal automobile.
If that's the case, wouldn't it make more sense to require them within 1/4 mile of a bus stop?
Sure, that's a good suggestion.
Okay. On G, the way that I read G, bathroom facilities, is that we can have individual bathrooms, toilets, and shared showers or we could have individual bathrooms and toilets or shared showers, which seems like an odd alternative. You can either have bathrooms or shower. You can either have a toilet or a shower. I assume what we mean is that we can have individual bathrooms, toilets, and showers, or shared bathrooms, toilets, and showers.
Correct.
So can you suggest a way to rephrase G that it would reflect that intent?
Yes. Yeah, we can bring back some language.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the final thing is I agree with Mr. Ackerman on parking, and I just as soon strike paragraph J and let whatever background rules for the zoning category apply.
Is there interest on the board to consider, because again, like when we get let's say, theoretically we're going to get an application for something like this, we will probably look at the parking section if it is in a zoning district where parking is required. Do you feel like we should look at hotel motels or multifamily, or do you think that there should be some sort of alternative or an additional standard for this?
Is the difference that hotel motels are based on square feet, multifamily is based 1 per 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, I think hotels are maybe based on rooms and some additional square footage. And then multifamily is based on bedrooms.
I would say whichever one leads to the lowest total number.
Okay.
But that's my personal, I have no idea what the rest of the board thinks. And Madam Chair, those are all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Megan Walker-Radke?
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions that center around what appears to be a difference between the stated purpose of the SROs and the definition. So up in the beginning of the packet, I'm scrolling up here to find a page number for you, but we talk about using SROs, let's see, mitigate the special needs of the homeless, including living arrangements for homeless families with children, transitional housing for the employed homeless, and so on. But then if you look at the definition, it says that it is a multifamily use consisting of living units intended for occupancy of no more than one person. So I'm sort of confused. Do we intend these to just be for a single person to occupy a room, or are we actually trying to provide a housing option for families? And if it is for families, I would ask staff to maybe look into some sort of alternative, like capacity or space requirement, maybe a minimum number of square feet per person, or no more than 2 adults per room. I mean, we can talk about it, right? But if the purpose is to provide flexible housing options for how people live today, including families, I think that leaving the definition to state that it's for no more than one person, and then centering our definitions or our regulations around the idea of one person is, that seems to be in conflict.
I think you might be looking at one of the examples from one of the other cities that we provided. But the comments are good, and I think that's something that is something that the board certainly can talk about if you have conception of how these should be, or how the city should be looking at these.
Okay, should I ask my second question, which is kind of related to the first, and then we can, I guess if anybody else has comments, they can add those. Because my second question is, I mean, I like the idea of providing housing for families. One concern would be, are we providing, this is a vulnerable population. If we're talking about, housing for homeless families or for people in various forms of transition, and this is a very vulnerable population. Are we making any sort of regulatory requirements that would take into account the safety of, say, women and children, especially with regards to shared facilities? So like in college, I lived in a dorm as well. I had a shared bathroom, shared shower. I have no problem with that as a concept. I do sort of hesitate with the idea of having potentially vulnerable women and children sharing the facilities with unrelated men. specifically. I don't know if anybody else shares that concern, but it's something that I would at least like to talk about. And those are my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Radke. Does staff have any comment?
No, not. We can do some more research and see how, if there's if those issues have been addressed with other jurisdictions. By and large, that's not something that we saw in our research, but it's a good point.
Thank you. And Mr. Ackerman, is your hand raised again, or did you not unraise it?
My hand is raised again.
Okay, go ahead.
The SROs are one piece of affordable housing. It would be very, very unusual for them to be targeted at families. I guess you could. There's really other facilities that are targeted at families that are in some distress, and it makes very little sense for us to try to accommodate a family, which is almost by definition 3 people. But even so, children and I don't think should be included in this version of an SRO. There obviously is a place for affordable housing for displaced families, or for families that need affordable housing, but I don't think the SRO is intended traditionally to address that issue. I also agree. I don't think we should have a maximum on the size, and I don't think we should. I agree with Mr. Hawkins that we need to clarify G, and I would still get rid of parking as a requirement. It drives up the cost, and the people that we seek to serve with SROs are likely to have relatively few vehicles. Thank you, and I'll put my hand back down.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Do any more members of the board have comments? I'm just going to add my 2 cents in. Oh, Mr. Black, Megan Walker-Radke, go ahead.
This is just to comment on Mr. Ackerman. I think I would like to hear from staff and maybe from other members of the board, kind of a decision. Are the SROs going to just be targeted for individuals to occupy the room, or is this going to be something that serves families? Because if we're just thinking about individuals, then I think that we're talking about 2 totally different things. And if we're talking about serving families, then there need to be some more substantial revision to the language that's currently proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker-Radke. Ms. Sutton?
So I agree with a lot of, the questions and the thoughts have been raised. I think my thought on, as far as like the single occupancy is, I definitely agree with getting rid of the maximum size. I think that in some cases, this might be an appropriate setting for a couple maybe, or maybe a single mom. It might be a temporary solution if there's one child. I definitely don't see large families living in this setting, but I like the idea of building more flexibility in wherever we can. I do think that maybe allowing the possibility of a couple, or 2 people, a mom and a child or something, to live in these may be what sort of sets it apart from a dormitory. So I encourage, making the changes other people have talked about. And that's sort of my thought on that, is that maybe we limit them to 2 people with, obviously the intent being that most of them are single occupancy. But I don't know if staff thought about that at all, or if they have any thoughts.
Staff, do we have any response?
No, that's good. I mean, we can definitely amend the definition to include one or two individuals. I mean, I agree in that I think as we thought about it and as the language is, it's conceived of as more of a small individual unit, hence the single room occupancy. If the interest of the board is to look at other examples of types of facilities that may be there to serve families, we could certainly bring that back as well with some additional research. I did want to kind of touch on. I think all the recommendations are good. We'll make all of those recommended changes. In terms of zoning districts, how does the board feel about keeping SROs to commercial and mixed-use zoning districts, or is there an interest in, if we come back to you with maybe some amended language or somehow tying this back in with dormitories, does the board want to entertain these potentially being in residential districts?
Mr. Ackerman? Mr. Ackerman?
I'm talking.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm in favor of extending them into residential districts. I mean, these are residences, and it doesn't make sense to me that we keep them in basically commercial districts. Anyway, I would like to see some language that proposes that.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree. You know, having them available in residences, I don't have a problem with that. And sort of going to the family versus sort of individual. Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand. You know, some of the concerns about sort of you know, men and women and children, but I guess it's hard for me to imagine. I guess it kind of, you know, I don't know how these are going to be, I don't know, sort of, and I'm using the word advertised or sort of promoted, but I mean, if for example there was, you know, a family or like a woman and a child, and they wanted to, you know, be housed and live in one of these, and I don't know, and that was their choice, and it was like, you know, I don't know, some you know, they were willing to sort of share bathrooms with someone else. I don't know if is it really sort of our place to say no, that choice is not yours. So I mean, I guess I'm a little bit sort of concerned of kind of over regulating this and just trying to create some more flexibility. I understand what the, you know, potential, you know, concerns are. I just don't know how we could. It seems like we potentially would go down a rabbit hole of trying to sort of trying to sort of think forward in terms of every potential sort of circumstance. So.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Ms. Radke?
This is just in response. I understand Mr. Newman's point about not wanting to over-regulate in this case or to overreach, but a lot of women and children end up in homelessness because of domestic violence. And so I think that in the case of providing some sort of structure in terms of that relate to safety and security for that population, I think we have the opportunity to provide them with a more secure living arrangement if we intend for SROs to be available to that group of people. So, and I know that, you know, you say there's a choice, but if someone is really in a situation of homelessness or very near a situation of homelessness, they may not actually have a lot of choices. So if this is something where we do want it to be a choice, I just think that we have the opportunity here to make it a safer and a better choice. If we intend to serve that population. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Radke. Mr. Ackerman.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, there's a number of ways that you could accommodate common facilities that do not mean that we're all taking a shower together. Certainly, they can have individual shower rooms that are used by the whole floor or something like that. That was a pretty common thing in Europe back in the day. The other thing is, at least in Gainesville, Peaceful Paths has a very large facility for families and a lot of people, obviously, that it's related to domestic violence. This might be an opportunity for somebody like Peaceful Paths to build a smaller scale units for more permanent living. I'm not really sure. I'm in favor of trying to make this as attractive to somebody who wants to operate it and deal with issues that arise from that. Obviously, if you're going to have women and children, you're going to need to have some ability to restrict access at least part of the time so that people have some opportunity for some privacy. But I would leave that. I don't think I would regulate that in this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Mr. Hawkins.
And I thank you. I was talking to mute. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I resonate with Member Walker-Rackey's concern about family. I think it's a good catch in the definition, and I definitely think that this is something that we would want to have available to a couple. And I also am responsive to Member Newman's concern that I wouldn't want to tell a family of 3 or a family of 4 that they couldn't take advantage of this option. The code does define family. I just checked the definition section real quick. So we could just refer to family instead of one person, and that would prevent it from being, sort of packed with 4 unrelated adults. So we would still have, some control to ensure that it is indeed one family that's going in there. But I think that's an excellent change that I would endorse, that I would vote in favor of.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Do we have any more comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to put in my 2 cents here. I think that everybody made really constructive comments. I completely agree with Ms. Walker-Radke about the families. I work with children, and a lot of the training that I have to do to be able to work with children has to do with sexual assault and grooming and all kinds of things. And if this is something that we want to have available to families, and I think that that's what the board is going towards, I do think that there needs to be some kind of arrangement where a mom and a 13-year-old son could have a bathroom within their unit that they don't have to share, or have some way to have private access to bathroom facilities. So, or you could have a situation where you have a mother with a special needs, an older special needs child of a different gender, and that would be very difficult to deal with in a community bathroom. So I don't know exactly what the solution is, but there are a lot of permutations that we need to consider. I agree with Ms. Sutton that I think this does need to be flexible. So whatever we can do to make it more flexible is good. I agree with Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Ackerman that it might be advisable to remove section J with the parking and just go with whatever is available in that zoning district. And I think those are all of the points that I wanted to make. So Unless any of the board have a response to any of that, we will go ahead and open up to public comment. Speakers from the public who wish to speak will be given 3 minutes to comment. We ask that when you do that, you please mute the sound on your computer or the device that you're using so that we don't get an echo, and please state your name clearly for the record. Larry Schooler, our moderator, do we have anybody from the public who wishes to speak to this item?
Madam Chair, not at this time. No, we don't.
Okay.
Should we put the phone number back up for a second and just see?
I think that's probably a good idea. Okay, so we have our toll-free number back up. If there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak, please call in and we'll make sure that you get heard. In the meantime, Mr. Ackerman, do you have a comment?
Just briefly, people ought to be aware that this is an ordinance that's not going to be passed tonight. It obviously has to be reworked by staff, and it's going to come back at a later date. At least that's my assumption. True, Mr. Persons?
Very true, Mr. Ackerman.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Persons and Mr. Ackerman. Mr. Hawkins? You're still muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Mr. Ackerman's question. Are we not making a recommendation to the City Commission on this language? Is it we're going to continue this item regardless, or you're going to put it on another agenda, Mr. Persons?
That was my intent. I mean, I think the comments were really constructive tonight, and I think what I'd like to do is for the board to continue it and give us a chance to bring back the revised language and potentially looking at some residential zoning districts and cleaning up. What I heard and what my thoughts are at right now is potentially just reworking our dormitory definitions to start with, and then sort of bringing that forward to you as a proposal for next month.
I have one additional comment then, since we're not moving towards a motion. If you do suggest additional zoning districts, would you bring us a map?
Yes, absolutely.
And in particular, in the central part of the city, it gets hard to tell what's what. Maybe just two colors in a blow up for the central part of the city, the color that allows SROs and the color that doesn't. If that's easy to do, if it's not, we can look at it. But that kind of presentation might be helpful to get a sense of if we're going down into some more detailed zoning districts.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see where they relate to the neighborhoods.
That sounds good. And I think especially with this format, like the more detailed maps, the better probably.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Persons. Mr. Schooler, do we have any members of the public on the line?
No, Madam Chair, we still don't. Sorry.
Okay, since we haven't had anybody join us, if that changes in the next couple of minutes, please let me know, but I think that we're going to move on. Do any members of the board have a motion or have any additional comments? Mr. Ackerman.
Madam Chair, thank you. I move that let me find my glasses. I move that we continue petition PB 19-132 TCH to the next regularly scheduled meeting or as soon thereafter as possible.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Ackerman. Do we have a second?
Second from Hawkins.
A second from Mr. Hawkins. Any comments? All right, I have one quick comment. I just want to thank staff for putting this on the agenda. It's nice to see us moving through some of the things that we were talking about last summer with the city commission. So thank you for doing that and for helping us jump through the hoops tonight. I appreciate it. All right. Seeing no comments from the board, and I'm assuming we still don't have any members of the public on the line, I'm going to do a roll call. All those in favor of continuing until our next meeting. Ms. Sutton?
Aye.
Mr. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Walker-Radke?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Blythe?
Aye.
And I am also an affirmative vote, so that is a unanimous vote to continue to our next meeting. Our next meeting date is going to be June 25th, 2020. Staff, do we know if that's going to be a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting, or we don't know yet?
It will be virtual. I think right now our plan is to hold all of our regular advisory board meetings, including our special magistrate, for the month of June virtually. We may be back, depending on circumstances, to some sort of physical meeting in the July timeframe, although I'm guessing it'll probably look different, but we'll keep you in the loop. And I appreciate everybody's flexibility with the format, and I want to give a shout out to my staff who have been really awesome in getting all this set up and learning Zoom very quickly, and thank you to Broadcasting for being flexible and assisting us, and thank you, Larry.
You're here.
Thank you, Mr. Persons. Mr. Newman, do you have a comment?
Yes, I just thought you did a great job, by the way.
I just called on people in order. His staff did all the hard work.
Again, here.
Mr. Ackerman, you have a comment?
This is just a member comment. It just strikes me as weird that we're all without pictures. And I don't know why we elected that, but it just seems weird to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a work in progress. I think we'll keep working on it, and we'll have a video next time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Persons.
I like to see your face.
Do we have any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.